Welcome to Thought Grid. School trips. They're supposed to be a highlight of our academic lives, a chance to escape the classroom, explore new places, and create unforgettable memories with friends. But what happens when those memories turn into nightmares? When the excitement of adventure gives way to chilling encounters that defy explanation? Today, we delve into the unsettling reality of school trips gone horribly wrong, where the pursuit of education leads to terrifying, unforeseen consequences. These aren't just cautionary tales. These are true accounts from students and chaperones who embarked on what they thought would be an innocent excursion, only to find themselves trapped in a horror they could never have imagined. Before we begin, if you find these stories as unsettling as we do, please remember to like this video and subscribe to Thought Grid for more chilling tales. Now, let's begin. Story 1. The Whispering Museum. This first chilling account comes from a group of high school students on a history field trip to a renowned, albeit old and somewhat eerie, natural history museum in a major East Coast city in the fall of 2017. The museum was famous for its vast collection of ancient artifacts, taxidermied animals, and a particularly unsettling exhibit dedicated to forgotten civilizations. The students, accompanied by their history teacher, Mr. Harrison, were excited to explore the dusty halls and learn about the past. The day started normally enough. The students wandered through the exhibits, taking notes and occasionally making jokes about the strangely lifelike animal displays. But as they ventured deeper into the museum, particularly into the section dedicated to ancient rituals and forgotten cultures, a subtle shift in the atmosphere began to occur. The air grew heavy, thick with a strange, almost metallic scent, and a profound silence seemed to descend upon them, muffling even their own footsteps. One student, a quiet girl named Emily, began to complain of a faint whispering sound. She claimed it was coming from the display cases, from the ancient artifacts themselves. Her friends dismissed it as her imagination, or perhaps the museum's old ventilation system, but Emily insisted, her eyes wide with a growing unease. She said the whispers were unintelligible at first, but gradually they seemed to coalesce into a low, rhythmic chant, a sound that seemed to vibrate deep within her bones. Mr. Harrison, noticing Emily's distress, tried to reassure her, suggesting she might be tired. But then, other students began to hear it. Faint at first, then growing steadily more distinct. The whispers seemed to emanate from the very walls of the museum, a chorus of unseen voices speaking in a language they didn't recognize. The museum, once a place of quiet learning, began to feel oppressive, its ancient artifacts seeming to watch them with an unsettling intensity. As they moved into a particularly dark and secluded section of the exhibit dedicated to a long-lost civilization known for its macabre burial rituals, the whispers intensified. They were no longer just whispers, they were distinct voices, speaking in a guttural, almost hissing tone. The students huddled together, their initial excitement replaced by a creeping dread. They could feel a distinct cold spot in the air, a pocket of icy chill that seemed to follow them as they moved through the exhibit. The taxidermied animals in the adjacent halls seemed to turn their heads, their glass eyes following their every move. The climax of their ordeal occurred when they reached the centerpiece of the exhibit, a meticulously reconstructed burial chamber, complete with ancient sarcophagi and a chilling array of ceremonial masks. As they stood before it, the whispers erupted into a cacophonal roar, a cacophony of voices screaming in unison, a sound that seemed to tear at the very fabric of their sanity. The lights in the museum flickered wildly, plunging the hall into momentary darkness, then back into a dim, flickering glow. The ceremonial masks on display seemed to contort, their painted faces twisting into grotesque grimaces of agony and rage. Emily, overwhelmed by the sensory assault, collapsed to the floor, clutching her head, screaming that the voices were inside her head, telling her to do terrible things. Mr. Harrison, despite his own terror, rushed to her side, trying to comfort her. But then the sarcophagi in the burial chamber began to vibrate, a low, ominous rumble that resonated through the floor. The heavy stone lids began to slowly, agonizingly slide open, revealing the dark, empty voids within. Panic erupted. The students screamed, pushing and shoving, desperate to escape the terrifying display. Mr. Harrison, grabbing Emily, urged them to run. They fled through the museum, the screams of the unseen voices echoing behind them, the flickering lights casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to reach out and grab at them. They didn't stop until they burst out of the museum's grand entrance, gasping for breath, their faces pale with terror. They immediately called the police, recounting their terrifying experience. The police, initially skeptical, found no evidence of forced entry or vandalism. The museum staff, while acknowledging the building's reputation for being haunted, dismissed the incident as a mass hallucination brought on by the students' overactive imaginations. But the students knew what they had seen and heard. They never returned to that museum, and many of them still suffer from nightmares about the whispering voices and the opening sarcophagi. Emily, in particular, was deeply affected. She spent weeks in therapy, struggling to reconcile her experience with reality. She still claims to hear faint whispers on occasion, especially when she's alone in a quiet room. The incident left an indelible mark on all of them, a chilling reminder that some places hold secrets far older and darker than any history book can convey. And sometimes, when you delve into the past might just reach out and grab you, pulling you into a nightmare from which there is no escape. Story 2. The Abandoned Camp. This next unsettling account comes from a group of middle school students on an outdoor education trip to a remote, forested area known for its challenging hiking trails and rustic campsites. This was in the spring of 2019. The students, accompanied by their science teacher, Ms. Davis, and 2 parent chaperones, were excited for a week of learning about nature, building teamwork, and experiencing the wilderness firsthand. Their campsite was deep within the woods, accessible only by a long, winding dirt road, far from any signs of civilization. Their first few days were filled with typical outdoor activities, setting up tents, learning about local flora and fauna, and navigating trails with maps and compasses. The weather was cooperative, and the students were enthusiastic despite the lack of cell service and modern amenities. Ms. Davis, a seasoned outdoors woman, ensured that all safety protocols were meticulously followed, and the chaperones kept a watchful eye on the energetic youngsters. The nights were dark, filled with the sounds of crickets and distant animal calls, and the air was crisp and clean. The first sign that something was amiss occurred on their 3rd night. They had just finished a campfire storytelling session when they heard a faint, rhythmic thumping sound coming from deeper in the woods. It was a dull, heavy thud, like something large being dragged or dropped repeatedly. They paused, listening. The thumping continued, slow and deliberate, punctuated by what sounded like a low, guttural groan. Ms. Davis, ever practical, suggested it might be a large animal, perhaps a bear, and instructed everyone to remain calm and make noise to scare it away. They banged pots and pans, shouted, and shone their flashlights into the darkness, but the thumping continued, seemingly unaffected. The next morning, they decided to investigate the source of the sound. Following the direction from which it had come, they hiked for about an hour through dense undergrowth until they stumbled upon an abandoned campsite. It was unlike any they had seen before. The tents were ripped and torn, their contents scattered and rotting. A rusty, overturned cooking pot lay near a cold, ash-filled fire pit. But what truly sent a chill down their spines were the crude, almost primal symbols carved into the trees surrounding the camp. They were strange, angular markings, unlike anything they had ever seen in their nature guides, and they seemed to glow faintly in the dim light of the forest. As they explored the abandoned camp, they found a tattered, mud-stained journal. Miss Davis, her brow furrowed with concern, began to read aloud. The journal belonged to a group of college students who had camped there a few years prior. The entries started innocently enough, detailing their adventures and observations. But as the days progressed, the tone of the journal grew increasingly frantic. The students began to describe strange noises, unsettling feelings of being watched, and the discovery of the same crude symbols carved into the trees. The last entry was a desperate plea for help, describing a relentless thumping sound, a guttural groan, and the terrifying realization that they were not alone, and that whatever was out there was closing in. Miss Davis, visibly shaken, closed the journal. The students were silent, their faces pale. The thumping sound, which they had dismissed as an animal, now took on a far more sinister meaning. They felt a profound sense of dread, a chilling understanding that the previous campers had encountered something truly terrifying. They decided to leave the abandoned camp immediately and return to their own campsite, their sense of adventure replaced by a desperate need for safety. But the return journey was not as straightforward as they had hoped. The forest seemed to have changed. The familiar landmarks were gone, replaced by an endless labyrinth of trees that all looked the same. The air grew heavy, thick with an oppressive silence, broken only by the sound of their own frantic breathing. They were lost, and as the sun began to set, casting long, eerie shadows through the trees, the faint, rhythmic thumping sound returned, closer this time, and seemingly coming from all directions. The climax of their ordeal occurred as darkness fully enveloped the forest. They huddled together, their flashlights frantically cutting through the oppressive gloom, as the thumping grew louder, more insistent, accompanied by the same low, guttural groan they had heard before. It was no longer just a sound, it was a presence, a heavy, unseen force moving through the trees, circling them, closing in. They could feel the vibrations through the ground, a low thrumming that resonated deep within their chests. Then, a new sound joined the chorus. A faint, high-pitched whistling like wind through a hollow bone. It was a haunting, melodic sound, utterly out of place in the terrifying symphony of the forest. And as the whistling grew louder, the thumping stopped. The groan ceased. A profound, unnerving silence descended upon them, broken only by their own ragged breaths. They shone their flashlights into the darkness, desperate for a glimpse of their tormentor, but saw nothing. Suddenly, a single, crude symbol, identical to the ones carved into the trees at the abandoned camp, appeared on the trunk of a tree directly in front of them. It glowed faintly, pulsating with an inner light. And then, a voice, deep and resonant, seemed to emanate from the symbol itself. "You are trespassing," it boomed, its words echoing through the silent forest, shaking the very ground beneath their feet. "You have disturbed what sleeps." Terror seized them. They screamed, a collective cry of pure, unadulterated fear, and ran. They ran blindly through the forest, not caring about direction, only about escape. They ran until their lungs burned, until their legs ached, until they could no longer hear the booming voice or see the glowing symbol. They ran until they stumbled onto the familiar dirt road, miles from their campsite, and saw the faint glow of their bus headlights in the distance. They piled into the bus, hysterical, their story a frantic, incoherent jumble of thumping, groans, glowing symbols, and a booming voice. The school immediately launched an investigation, but found no evidence of any abandoned camp, no strange symbols, and no record of any college students disappearing in that area. The park rangers dismissed their story as a shared hallucination, a result of fear and exhaustion, but the students knew what they had seen and heard. Many of them still suffer from nightmares about the thumping, the glowing symbols, and the booming voice that warned them of their trespass. Miss Davis, though outwardly skeptical, resigned from her teaching position shortly after the incident. She never spoke about the trip again, but her eyes held a haunted look, a silent testament to the horrors she had witnessed. The incident left an indelible mark on all of them, a chilling reminder that some places hold secrets far older and darker than any human understanding. And sometimes when you venture into the wild, you might find that you're not just exploring nature, but disturbing something ancient, something powerful, and something that does not take kindly to trespassers. Story 3. The Vanishing Bus. Our final and perhaps most perplexing account comes from a group of elementary school students and their teachers on a seemingly routine field trip to a local science museum in a bustling metropolitan area. This was in the spring of 2022. The trip involved 2 buses, each carrying approximately 30 students and 3 teachers. The students were excited, chattering excitedly about the exhibits they were about to see, their faces pressed against the windows, eager to arrive. The 2 buses departed from the school simultaneously, following the same route. The lead bus, driven by Mr. Henderson, a veteran school bus driver, carried Mrs. Peterson's 5th grade class. The second bus, driven by a newer driver, Ms. Jenkins, carried Mr. Miller's 5th grade class. The plan was simple. Follow the lead bus, arrive at the museum, and enjoy a day of educational fun. Everything proceeded as planned for the first half of the journey. The buses maintained a safe distance, visible to each other in the morning traffic. Mrs. Peterson, in the lead bus, occasionally glanced in her rearview mirror, confirming that Ms. Jenkins' bus was still behind them. The students sang songs, played games, and eagerly pointed out landmarks along the way. It was a typical, joyful school trip. The incident occurred as they approached a particularly long and old tunnel, a well-known landmark in the city. Mr. Henderson's bus entered the tunnel first, its headlights cutting through the dim artificial light. Mrs. Peterson, from her seat, watched as the entrance of the tunnel swallowed the bus, the tail lights slowly disappearing into the darkness. She then turned to check on her students, ensuring they were all seated and safe. When they emerged from the other side of the tunnel, approximately 2 minutes later, Mrs. Peterson glanced back, expecting to see Ms. Jenkins' bus following closely behind. But it wasn't there. The road behind them was empty. She frowned, thinking perhaps Ms. Jenkins had taken a wrong turn or had pulled over for some reason. She immediately called the school on her radio, but there was no answer. She tried Ms. Jenkins' bus directly, but again, only static. Mr. Henderson, noticing her distress, pulled the bus over to the side of the road. They waited and waited, but the second bus never appeared. Panic began to set in. They called the police, reporting a missing school bus with 30 children and 3 adults on board. The police launched an immediate and massive search operation involving multiple agencies, helicopters, and ground teams. They scoured the entire route, re-examining every turn, every intersection, every possible detour. They checked every surveillance camera along the route, every traffic light, every building. But there was no trace of the second bus. The most baffling aspect of the investigation was the tunnel itself. Surveillance footage from both ends of the tunnel showed Mr. Henderson's bus entering and exiting, but the footage from the entrance of the tunnel showed Ms. Jenkins's bus entering, and the footage from the exit of the tunnel showed nothing. It was as if the bus had simply vanished into thin air within the confines of the tunnel. There were no signs of an accident, no debris, no skid marks, no evidence of any kind that a bus had ever been there. The students and teachers on the lead bus were questioned repeatedly. They all confirmed that Ms. Jenkins' bus had been directly behind them when they entered the tunnel. They described seeing its headlights, its distinct yellow color, its familiar shape, but none of them could explain its disappearance. The incident became a national mystery, a chilling enigma that defied all logical explanation. The climax of the investigation, or rather, the lack thereof, came months later. The police, after exhausting every possible lead, were forced to conclude that the bus, its occupants, and all evidence of its existence had simply vanished. There were no ransom demands, no sightings, no clues whatsoever. It was as if the bus had driven into another dimension, leaving behind only a void and a profound sense of loss. The families of the missing children and teachers were devastated. They held vigils, launched their own investigations, and pleaded with the public for any information. But the bus and everyone on it was gone. The school was forever marked by the tragedy, its once vibrant halls now filled with a somber silence. The tunnel, once a mundane part of the daily commute, became a place of morbid fascination, a dark portal to the unknown. Years passed. The case remained unsolved, a cold file in the police archives. But the memory of the vanishing bus lived on, a chilling reminder that some mysteries are never meant to be solved, and some disappearances are not just about getting lost. And sometimes, when you embark on a seemingly innocent journey, you might find that you're not just traveling through space, but through something far more terrifying, something that can swallow you whole, leaving no trace behind. Conclusion. These three accounts, drawn from the chilling realities of school trips gone wrong, serve as a stark reminder that even in the most structured and supervised environments, darkness can lurk. Each story, unique in its manifestation, shares a common thread: the profound vulnerability of children and young adults when they venture beyond the familiar confines of home and classroom, and the terrifying consequences of encountering the unknown. The students at the Whispering Museum learned that history is not always confined to textbooks and display cases. Their encounter with the ancient whispers and the opening sarcophagi shattered their sense of security, leaving them with a chilling understanding that some artifacts are not merely objects, but conduits for lingering energies, and some places hold secrets far older and darker than any history book can convey. Their experience is a testament to the fact that the pursuit of knowledge, when untempered by caution, can lead to a fate far worse than any academic failure. The middle schoolers at the abandoned camp discovered that the wilderness, while beautiful, can harbor malevolent forces. Their terrifying ordeal with the thumping, the glowing symbols, and the booming voice revealed that some places are not just natural landscapes, but ancient territories guarded by unseen entities, and some trespasses are met with chilling consequences. Their case serves as a powerful warning that when you venture into the wild, you might not just be exploring nature, but disturbing something ancient, powerful, and deeply territorial. And the elementary school students and teachers on the vanishing bus found that even the most mundane journey can lead to an inexplicable disappearance. Their terrifying experience with the tunnel that swallowed an entire bus, leaving no trace, proved that some mysteries defy all logical explanation, and some journeys lead to a void from which there is no return. Their story is a stark reminder that some disappearances are not just about getting lost, but about being erased, leaving behind only a profound sense of loss and an enduring enigma. These narratives are not mere fiction, they are echoes of real incidents, whispers from the dark corners of our world. They remind us that the trust we place in the safety of organized excursions, in the assumption that supervision guarantees security, can be profoundly misplaced. The school trip horror stories serve as a powerful cautionary tale, urging us to remain vigilant, to question the unexplained, and to remember that when you embark on a journey, you might not just be traveling through space, but through something far more terrifying, something that can swallow you whole, leaving no trace behind. The chilling reality of school trip horror stories lies in their violation of innocence. These are not hardened adults seeking thrills, but often children and young adults, whose sense of safety and understanding of the world is still developing. The trauma inflicted by such encounters can be profound and long-lasting, shaping their perceptions of reality and leaving them with a lifelong sense of unease. The very places meant to educate and inspire become sources of terror, forever altering their relationship with learning and exploration. These stories also highlight the limitations of human control and understanding. Despite meticulous planning, experienced chaperones, and modern technology, these incidents demonstrate that there are forces at play that defy our logic and our ability to predict or prevent. Whether it's an ancient entity awakened by curiosity, a territorial spirit defending its domain, or an inexplicable anomaly that swallows an entire bus. These events remind us of our inherent vulnerability in a world that is far stranger and more unpredictable than we often care to admit. Furthermore, the psychological impact of these experiences extends far beyond the immediate terror. The victims, even those who physically escape, are often left with deep emotional scars. Nightmares, anxiety, a profound distrust of seemingly safe environments, and a lingering sense of the unknown. The innocence of childhood is irrevocably shattered, replaced by a chilling awareness that the world holds horrors that cannot be explained away by science or reason. These are the true costs of a school trip gone horribly, inexplicably wrong. These narratives, while disturbing, serve a purpose beyond mere entertainment. They are cautionary tales, echoing the primal fears of losing control, of succumbing to the unknown, and of the vulnerability of those we are meant to protect. The students and teachers, seeking education and adventure, become proxies for the audience, experiencing the gradual erosion of safety and the terrifying realization that some secrets are best left buried. The psychological impact is profound, leaving the victims forever altered, their sense of security irrevocably shattered. The stories are not just about what happened, but about the lingering dread, the constant vigilance, and the chilling knowledge that the comfort of a school trip can, in an instant, become a stage for terror. Ultimately, these stories are a testament to the fact that horror doesn't always need a supernatural explanation. Sometimes, the most terrifying things are the ones that could happen to anyone, at any time, in any seemingly safe place. The school trip, stepping into the heart of a new experience, inadvertently steps into its nightmares. And the chilling truth is, once you've seen what lurks beneath the surface of normalcy, you can never truly feel safe again. The echoes of these real incidents serve as a stark warning. When you embark on a school trip, you're not just going on an outing. You're potentially opening yourself up to a reality far more disturbing than any fiction. A reality where the line between the mundane and the terrifying blurs, and where the most terrifying monsters are not always the ones with teeth and claws, but the ones that reside in the shadows, waiting patiently for their next victim. Next victim. Victim. The echoes of these real incidents serve as a stark warning. When you embark on a school trip, you're not just going on an outing, you're potentially opening yourself up to a reality far more disturbing than any fiction. A reality where the line between the mundane and the terrifying blurs, and where the most terrifying monsters are not always the ones with teeth and claws, but the ones that reside in the shadows, waiting patiently for their next victim. Next victim. Next victim. Next victim.